Welcome everyone to Already Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Tara, and we are here to talk about the Twilight Zone Season 3, Episode 15. It's called Equality of Mercy. So full spoilers for the episode as always. This one stars Dean Stockwell in the lead role, where he is the new officer, the new lieutenant assigned to a small platoon in the Philippine Islands, right at the tail end of World War II. And all the men there in the platoon are tired. They're ready, and they kind of. It feels like they kind of have an idea that they're on the last, even though the bomb's not dropped yet. That's kind of, they find that out at the end of the episode. But it feels like we're at the end, and I guess it probably would, because at this point, like, Nazi Germany had already been defeated. So I guess it would have felt like we're in the late hours of this war.
Yeah.
And they're all tired. They know there's a Japanese platoon in this cave that's nearby, and they're just kind of like keeping an eye on each other and just watching that each other don't do anything. But then this officer comes in and he just wants to go in there with grenades. He wants to kill. He gets mad at them for not having their guns cleaned and all these things. But then the Twilight Zone twist, as it were, the premise of this, because I was actually thinking it went a while where it was just a war story. I'm like, where's the Twilight Zone part? Why is this a Twilight Zone episode? And it comes quite late on. It's just before the ad break, where something mysterious happens when he bends down to pick over his binoculars, and all of a sudden he's actually in the Japanese camp, but not right now. It's like set before, but he essentially gets to see a similar situation on the other side of the fight, and that's really what it's about. It's about him being this bloodthirsty guy trying to prove himself, but wanting to kill as many of the enemy if he can, without considering the fact that he's going after human beings that don't necessarily need to be killed, and he sees that from the other side and realizes maybe he should grow up a little bit. That's the basic gist of the episode. Tara, how did you feel about Equality of Mercy?
I honestly, I do think it's pretty good. It's a good anti-war episode, which we know Rod loves, and I think it's a premise that's not totally unfamiliar to the show, but I do think it works. I don't know if you want to talk about the casting or not, but of Dean Stockwell in both parts, I don't know if it's problematic. I feel like
honestly, it's maybe the biggest talking point we're going to have of this episode is that, so Dean Stockwell is this young hotshot lieutenant, and it reminded me of a little bit of I don't know, I love this movie, so you're going to like roll your eyes at me bringing this up, but you know how in Aliens they've got was it Garmin, who's like, he's never done like a drop before, so all this like team of colonial marines are all experienced, and he's like, when they're dropping down from the ship and he's like nervous, and they're like, how many combat drops you had, Lieutenant? And he's like, 2 simulated. How many live? 1, including this one. Or whatever the line is.
I think the difference is although like he is an inexperienced officer who's trying to be like a hotshot, is that this one really does come off as he's bloodthirsty.
Yes.
Whereas Gorman feels like a coward from the beginning.
I think obviously the biggest message of this episode is that people making decisions in war should not be making them based on bloodthirst or revenge or emotion. They should be made for reasons where there's no other choice, because essentially they know they're in a stalemate. They don't want to do anything. There's no point in trying to get themselves killed. And this guy comes in and is like, nah, let's go throw some grenades and we'll get them done in an hour. There's no need to waste time. Let's go in and shoot people and stuff.
And he's constantly using like pretty derogatory terms and comparing them to ants, and how their lives don't matter because we're at war.
Yes.
And they're the enemy. All enemies must die. I won't be satisfied till all of them are died.
Yeah, he has this big speech when he's asked, when the guy who's sort of fighting back against him, without crossing a line where he's... No,
the guy who's just, they've been there for a long time. Like, they have the experience. Yeah,
so he kind of debates with them and says, like, how many of the Japanese have to die before you're satisfied? 10, 100, what? And he's like, and what's the line? Well, at first glance, all of them. They're enemy. All the enemy must die. So once he switches over, though, and I was okay, so this is an interesting premise. He's now on the Japanese side, but on the Japanese side, eventually a captain comes in who outranks him, and then he's kind of like, basically, the captain has the exact same speech later on in the episode, so he sees firsthand, because he's trying to talk them out of going into this cave. Well, there's an American platoon who are injured, who they could probably just bypass, but the problem here, though, Do you know what? I'm just thankful they didn't like try and use makeup to, make him look Japanese. But
I think they did.
Well, maybe if they, it was hard to tell because the
honestly,
black and white.
Yeah, it's a bit hard to tell. But I honestly, at first, I thought they were two different actors.
I could tell.
I had to look it up.
I could tell it was him, but there was a couple of lines of dialogue where I'm like, is he doing an accent? And then once he started talking a bit more, I'm like, he is doing an accent. And it became really glaring that he's doing this really bad Japanese accent that sounds almost like a really bad impersonation, like something someone would do as a comedy act. It sounded really bad.
Oh, yeah. It's way better than any of the stuff that came out around the same time.
Sure.
People doing Japanese impressions.
The problem is, though, he's speaking to actors who are Japanese who have basically just American accents. So it comes off like there's a really surreal quality to it. Because, okay, all you had to do is have no one like address the fact that he's a white American. Just don't bring it up. Just like it's the Twilight Zone. He's been transported into this platoon. Just have everyone act like he's one of them, and that's fine. But he's doing this accent, and as it kept going, there's a point where he's like debating with the captain, or he's debating with the other soldier, and the soldier's basically got just an American accent. He sounds like he's American, and because he's probably Japanese American, but he's doing this like accent, and I'm like, do you know how much sillier? I mean, it would sound bad anyway, but do you know how much sillier this sounds when you're actually speaking to someone who is Japanese and is speaking back and does not sound even remotely like he has an accent? Never mind this caricature accent that you're kind of pulling off. It was dodgy. The entire back half was like I got the point it was making. The point of it's very good, and the message that it has is very strong. And obviously, I don't think there's any ill intent with the episode because it does come from an anti-war place. Clearly, the whole point of this episode is to treat the enemy like they're still human beings. They're not just like ants to be killed. They are equal human beings who, if we can avoid having to have more bloodshed, we should. So the actual message.
Well, the episode ends with the atomic bomb, but yeah.
Yeah,
which kind of doesn't really support that message anymore, but it does end the war.
Yeah, but the atomic bomb happens because that happened. It's not like that's not in the episode because it's trying to make a point with that. It's just like, oh, that's what ended the war, so that's why it's there at the end.
Yeah.
Because I think the fact that he was so gun ho about getting in there and killing some people who he didn't need to kill is supposed to be extra darkly kind of ironic because the war might have been over. They might have came back and found out they had this call while they were killing people, and like, right. Oh, the war was over. Like these people died for nothing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I think that's very much the point, and that point is very noble, and because of that, it does feel like there's no ill intent. But this is a poor choice that, honestly, once I noticed he was doing this accent, I was a little uncomfortable, and I really couldn't let myself enjoy the episode at that point.
I still enjoyed the episode. I don't think it's that bad. I mean, obviously that stuff is problematic, but it's of its time, so
it's enough.
Is it any worse than like the Castro episode?
Do you know, in essence, it probably isn't. The funny thing is, though, is that and this is going to maybe sound like a weird thing to say, but I think the actor Peter Falk in that episode did like a better job, I guess. And it didn't come across as like, I don't know. It sounded more convincing, whereas this sounded like some sort of cartoony style accent that someone puts on when they're being insensitive.
Somebody who's just watched Godzilla movies and said, "Okay, I can do this."
Yeah, basically. So
did my research.
So I have to admit, I felt a little just, I couldn't kind of detach myself from this in the back half of the episode. Like I say, the message of the episode is strong, and the character building in the first half were really just setting up how gun ho this guy is about going and killing people. That stuff's solid. That stuff's.
I actually thought they got two different actors in the beginning. I had to look it up because I wasn't quite sure. Like, he did look different. And so they did something to him.
But he didn't look genuinely Japanese. Like, he was immediately off. Like, he didn't look like he was Japanese.
I mean, he looked a little Japanese. But he didn't sound like he was Japanese. That's for sure.
I don't know. It was... this is one I don't think is aged well. This is not aged well.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that it's problematic. It was wrong to do. Like, there's a reason we don't do it now, but I don't think it's like the worst.
Oh, I mean, I've never seen. Is it Breakfast at Tiffany's that has like the really bad?
Oh yeah, yeah.
But just because there's worse doesn't mean it should be ignored. And it's not that I'm excusing other ones that don't stick out to me as much, or they happen to be in movies that I like, or whatever. But I'm saying that this crossed a kind of a weird line, and whatever that line is, where I just couldn't separate my mind from what I was seeing. Like it looked wrong and off the entire time. And the lesson from that is not that if it's going to be done, do it convincingly. It shouldn't be done at all now. But when I'm watching stuff from the past that has this in it, the stuff that actually is oddly convincing doesn't stick out, or feel, you can kind of like, okay, it's of its time. You can sort of go along with it and just sort of accept it, and learn the lesson, acknowledge that it shouldn't happen now. But when it's like this, and the entire time it feels like a really bad caricature, or it's not even like the performance is a caricature, because there's not much of a character beyond just that he's scared and doesn't want to kill people.
He plays the same person, technically.
Yeah, which is kind of the point of the role, and that's fine. But it felt like, and because Dane Stockwell's a good actor, but this obviously is outside of the typical realm of what someone should be doing anyway. But it came off really poorly. I don't.
Yeah, I mean, I was distracted by it as well, but I do think it's still an okay episode. And I mean, maybe this one has crossed the line that the other ones have not, but I don't think it's any worse than the other one that we watched, which we both liked. So for what it's worth.
Did we like that episode that much?
The mirror episode? I think so.
It was okay. I don't know. That wasn't. Like, I think conceptually this episode's better than that one.
Yeah, I think we were both expecting more things to be problematic than they were, but it does seem like, why not just get two actors?
Oh, just do what I said earlier on. Just to have no one address the fact that he doesn't look like them.
I feel like that's been done in Twilight Zone already as well.
I think the concept of this episode it's maybe it takes a little bit to get to its point in the first half. If I'm just going to give it like a critique that's separate from the race sort of swapping performance, but I do think that this is so distracting, like his performance in the back half of this where he's supposed to be Japanese, that I don't think this works anymore. I don't really want to watch this again.
Okay.
I mean, the point it's making is a very solid point, and it's a good lesson with a good moral center, so there's no ill will meant.
Yeah.
But it's that's what it is. So, and I can already see the comments of we spent almost all the time talking about that, and not about.
And we haven't even brought up Leonard Nimoy yet.
Genius story. Oh yeah, Leonard Nimoy, who is an extra in this. He's just kind of on the platoon.
Lines. He got paid.
Yeah, he's got a couple of lines. He's just kind of sitting there, looking kind of young if you're used to him. Because this is a good, 6 years before Trek, so
get to see him with a little bit of emotion.
I know the range. Maybe that's why he was cast as Spock, because they realized he didn't have much range. They thought, oh, we're going Spock, perfect for him. It's the same reason why Arnold's so good at being a Terminator.
Yeah.
So
it's written around how he could speak.
Yes, exactly. I'm kidding. I have no qualms about Leonard Nimoy's acting ability. I'm just cracking some jokes. I don't really have much more to say. Honestly, I mean, yeah, I think the weird casting thing here overshadows everything else in this episode. And some people might be annoyed that we're not talking about the rest of it kind of in the way that we normally do. But everything else is kind of straightforward and doesn't really, it's just, he tries to convince the captain of the Japanese platoon to not go into the cave. We can just pass by, and the captain.
Sort of takes a while before he even shows up.
Yeah, and the captain just gives him the exact same speech that he said earlier. And at the end, when they hear, they get the call, he's back to being, on the American side. He's back into his own body or whatever, and they get the call that the war's over. They're getting ordered to come back because the first atomic bomb is dropped, and technically it's not been declared over yet, but everyone's pulling back to see like what happens now, because it feels like this could end the war. And that's where we end. Next week, hopefully we have a less problematic episode. We have an episode starring Robert Redford, which is hard not
I
to
know,
notice.
that was exciting to hear. I knew he was in one.
So it's called Nothing in the Dark, and Rod did mention Mr. Death. So I'll read the description on IMDb here and see what it says. That was the Arrested Development reference. Very good. An old woman has fought with death 1,000 times and has always won. But now she finds herself afraid to let a wounded policeman in her door for fear he is Mr. Death. Is he?
Yes.
We'll see if that bold prediction turns out to be true. Next time.
That's why you get Robert Redford. A young Robert Redford.
Yes, a very young Robert Redford. There you go. That's what we'll be talking about next time. Let us know what you thought of this episode in the comments below. Please do like and subscribe and all that stuff. And you can, of course, support us financially, can't you, Tara?
That's right. If you enjoy our reviews, please check out the Patreon page. It's patreon.com/MildFuzzTV. And if you donate as little as $1 per month, you'll get access to bonus episodes for other shows we do. And if you donate $5 per month, you'll get access to these Twilight Zone reviews 1 week early. So please head over and check that out. Thank you.
Yeah. You can also catch us on the Twitters at @mailed_fuzz for channel updates. But otherwise, that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV in the Twilight Zone.